Show and tell. Let's have a look at tools for measuring angles, otherwise known as protractors. Protractor is useful for people who are occasionally bending things over to acute angles, such as proctologists. Protractors for proctologists, you know. Well, that doesn't happen to be my gig. Nonetheless, I have a nice little selection of protractors I'd like to show you guys. I have a protractor here that measures inside angles. I have a protractor here that measures outside angles, and sometimes you don't need to actually measure an angle, you just want to set up some machinery, and in that instance maybe a gauge would be the right tool for you. Now if you really need to get precise, you got to get this out, and this here is a beauty. Calibrated in 1969. This here is a Starrett engineer's machinist protractor. This is really cool. Now, if your gig isn't small items and big items construction, well, there's no shortage of construction protractors, angle setting devices, saw guides out there. This here is one that I quite like. It's a smaller edition. It's available in larger ones, and we'll have a look at this too. Well, let's start off with this inside protractor. This is called an inside protractor because using these two arms, you can measure the inside of an angle, and it measures up to 90 degrees. It can measure wider angles using this face and one of the arms, and it's going to measure the 180 degree complement of, well, that angle that's indicated there. This tool is made by SK Tools, but this is not the American SK brand. This is SK from Niigata Seiki Tools out of Japan. Niigata is this town on the west coast of Japan, on the Japan Sea. And Niigata, this area that this comes from, there's two little tiny towns right next to each other. One is called Tsubame, and the other one is called Sanjo. These two towns are famous for metalwork. All sorts of Japanese metalwork has been coming out of these towns for hundreds of years. And especially since the end of the Second World War, Japan had a new industrial revolution, and these towns were really instrumental for making instruments. And not only instruments, but some famous brands that you might know, like, the camping brand Snow Peak. Yeah, they're out of Sanjo, and their products, their initial products, were mountaineering equipment made out of stainless steel and titanium. So this part of Japan is famous for their metalwork. There's some pretty fantastic stuff that come out of this area. I found this really interesting set of these titanium vacuum-sealed drinking vessels, mugs, cups, whatever you want to call them. Just beautiful. Titanium is a bitch to work with, really tough material, and in this town they've mastered it, at least a couple of companies. Back to SK. SK, the brand name is Niigata Seiki, and it's a beautiful little number of factories in this area. Here's a picture of one of them anyways. This company makes all sorts of measuring implements. They're not available readily in North America. However, you can find them on eBay. You can find them on Amazon Japan if you go looking for them. They're a wee bit on the expensive side, however. Nonetheless, it's a really interesting selection of different tools that you can find. And this is one of the better inside protractors I have ever seen. This inside protractor is really awesome. So once again, it measures up to 90 degrees like this, and over at 90 degrees using this angle here. It makes it really useful. Useful measuring actual angles of things that you have in front of you. For instance, you can lay it down and you can measure the bevel of a chisel or something like that. You can lock it down, and when you lock it down, you can now transfer the angle that way to, let's say, your sanding implement, your sharpening implement, and you can get like a perfect angle for sharpening. It's really, really cool. Now, this tool here, it did cost me a pretty penny, unfortunately. And since I bought this, Lee Valley Tools have come out with a very similar one. In fact, in some ways it might even be better because it's graduated on both sides, on one side and the other side. And it reads all the way up to 180 degrees, which is perhaps kind of handy. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not made in Japan like this one here, however. It's probably made in China, something like that. Presumably the quality control is adequate. The main difference is that this SK branded protractor has really thin arms, and that's going to allow it to get into really tight locations and measure very tight locations. It's able to measure smaller parts. The one from Lee Valley, the arms are quite a bit fatter, and it's gonna limit its functionality to some extent. Anyways, inside protractor really handy to have on hand. One thing to look for any protractor that you're going to get, try to find one that has a channel through which the thumb screw is fed through. And what that allows is a really tight fitment. You set the angle and you lock that down, and it ain't budging. Avoid protractors that have the thumb screw at the pivot down at the bottom corner. No matter how much you tighten them down, they're really easy to knock out of whack. Yeah. Now that was an inside protractor. Here is an outside protractor. An outside protractor is able to measure angles, let's say obtuse angles like that, acute angles like so. However, the acute angle, it can become a little bit limiting when you're under, let's say, about 30 degrees or so, as the amount of reference face becomes a little bit limited. Of course, these protractors, they excel when it comes to layout, because then, well, the amount of face, amount of base doesn't really matter as importantly. You can set it up like so. Now, as I described with the previous protractor, having a thumb screw in a channel makes for a much tighter arrangement. You lock that down and this thing doesn't move very much at all. Now this tool here is made by Shinwa, once again out of Japan. I bought this from Lee Valley Tools here in North America. I believe this model is specific to Lee Valley Tools because it doesn't have any sort of model number. Yeah, this company has a massive catalog, all sorts of really cool measuring equipment. Recommend that you do take a look at their catalog. Interest in corporate culture. They claim that the motto of this company is to procreate through measuring. I think I got a byline for my video here. To procreate through measuring, and they have a friendly corporate culture. Go figure. And here's an angle gauge set. It's a cheapo probably from China or something like that. Yeah, you can find these quite reasonably priced. Most of the prices I'm showing on this video are in Canadian Monopoly money. However, here's an Amazon America, and yeah, you can find these for under $20 for a set. And the set goes all the way from 5 degrees up to 90 degrees in 5-degree increments. Yeah, these gauges are quite nice because they offer a whole variety of ways of measuring. You can do an inside angle there, you can do an inside angle there, a 180 complement there of an inside angle, and you can measure an outside angle here. However, these reference faces they're a little bit on the small side, so I don't really find these ideal for measuring unless I know that the angle's going to be in this 5-degree increment sort of a fashion. Handy for setup, however, not too bad in that capacity. You might be tempted to use one of these gauges to measure a bevel on a tool. However, keep in mind that these they are hardened stainless steel, so they might be a little bit hard on your blade if you accidentally crash your tool into the steel. And perhaps a better option would be a brass angle gauge. This here is from Veritas tool. The Veritas tool that comes from the 51st state. However, this one here is actually not manufactured here. It's manufactured in our 11th province in the United States. Yeah, this is made out of brass, a much softer metal, and if you accidentally crash your blade into this, it's not going to be as damaging. Let's give this a test out, and let's see. This blade's somewhere around 25 degrees, I think. No, it's a little bit steeper than that. Here's the 30-degree slot. It's a little bit shallower than that, so we can guesstimate that this is about 27.5 degrees. Now, if accuracy and precision is what you're after, you really need yourself a universal bevel protractor, otherwise known as a vernier protractor, because it has a vernier scale. This one here is made by the Starrett Company of Athol, Massachusetts, United States. This company is really old. It was founded in 1880, and it is the premier metrology company of the United States of America. It is in Athol, Massachusetts, a really cute little town, eastern town, older town, and the campus for the Starrett Company is right downtown next to a waterway. It looks just idyllic and picturesque. They offer tours. If you're ever in that part of the world, if I'm ever in that part of the world, I'm definitely going to be taking this company up. I want to see their campus. I want to see, give me the full tour. I got to plan my vacation sometime out there. Anyways, let's get back to this protractor. This here is the Model 359. And a little bit of search on the internet suggests that it was patented in 1921. So this protractor, it's been in production for a long time. As we saw earlier on in the video, this one here was last calibrated in 1969, week 44. Jesus, I don't think it's lost any precision, however. Well, universal bevel protractor, you can use it, well, I guess universally. You can use it in all manners of ways because there's all sorts of adjustment. You can slide the blade along and you can get it to do just what you need it to do. For instance, you could potentially use it freehand, like so. Maybe you can measure that angle there. You could use it for a layout. It can lay flat on your workpiece, and you can, let's say, scribe a line like that. But where it really comes into its own is when you use it with a surface plate, like I have here underneath it. And you lock that blade down into position like so. The base lays flat on the surface plate, and now you can measure using the surface plate as a reference. And let me find our little workpiece here. Let's measure what angle this workpiece is at. Look at that, I'm already pretty close to it. Lower that down. Make sure it's tight in there, it's not. Lift it up a little bit. That seems pretty good. One way to check whether it's good or not is shine a flashlight behind it and I'll see if any light's leaking through. That seems to be pretty accurate. Now, you could lock it down with that thumb wheel. However, I find that I don't really need to do that. I can pick it up and I can take a look at it under my magnifying glass, magnifying loupe, just like so. And we'll see what angle that workpiece was at. So the way that you use a bevel protractor is you look at the 0 and you look at the degree scale. So that is reading just a little bit high of 18 degrees, 18.5, roughly. Now to find out the exact minute, what you need to do is slide along the vernier to find what minute mark is matching up with a tick mark. Now, you'll have to forgive me if I'm not perfectly accurate with this. I'm looking kind of sideways, cockeyed at my computer screen, so I can't really read it that well. But it looks like it's 35 or 40 minutes. So 18.5 degrees, just a little bit more than that. Yeah, this type of protractor, you can get like really, really accurate. And it's great for layout use as well. For layout, you want to choose an angle. Let's say the angle that you wanted to choose was, I don't know, let's just pick some number off the top of my head. Say you needed an angle of 46 degrees. Well, what you can do is you can get that 46 roughly dialed in like so. Again, I'm looking through my computer, so I'm not really being able to read that very well. And now you get it roughly in there, and then you can use this fine adjustment knob. This knob is ordinarily not connected to anything, but there's a little gear at the end, and when you push this in, it intermeshes with the gear, and it offers fine control. So once again, let's put the magnifier on there and let's get it at exactly 46. Gotta get that into focus, get the light so it's angled nicely. I can't seem to do both of those at the same time. Okay. Now, once again, forgive me if I'm not exactly on the money because, well, I'm doing this through my camera. But anyways, you get the idea. You can use that fine adjustment knob and you can dial in exactly where you need it to be. That's about on the money. And you can lock it down here with the locking knob. And now you have exactly that angle for doing your setup. Anyways, universal bevel protractor. Oh, I want to also talk about one more thing about it. I forgot almost. This one that I got from eBay, these are bloody expensive, you know. Oh God, their price is like over $1,000. But on eBay, you can buy these occasionally. You can get a pretty good deal under $100. I think I got this one for maybe $80 or something. It came with this wonderful little accessory. The accessory is called the acute angle adapter. Now, the way this accessory works is you feed it through that space like so, and then you press that down. It's spring loaded, and it allows you to now tighten it, and you can now measure acute angles. And you loosen it up. Get that box out of the way. Loosen it up, and put the blade in like so. And now you can measure freehand. I get that workpiece again. Now you can actually measure. You can measure freehand. Like so. Not too bad. Universal bevel protractor. Precision. And that covers some angle measuring and setting devices for small, precise work. Now for larger work, cabinetry, carpentry, yeah, there's no shortage of angle types of devices out there. This here is one that I really like. This here is a graduated bevel, once again by the Shinwa company. Let me just talk about this briefly. I really like this for a number of reasons. For one thing, unlike some competitors, this one doesn't have the gradations down here at the joint, but instead they're along this axis, and it makes setting angles like really easy and really nice and precise. Also, the lock knob, big, you can use it with gloved hands, and it's located here, not at the pivot, so this here locks down really nice and tight. Aluminum, it weighs nothing. This here is maybe 5 or 6 ounces in total. This here is the 1-foot version, fits in my toolbox just quite nicely, and is perfectly adequate for typical sawing jobs. Once again, available all the way up to 4 feet in length, 120 centimeters in case you need that. Anyways, another thing I like about the lightweightness in aluminum is that it is thick. That means that you can position it right on your workpiece and use it as a guide for your jigsaw or your circular saw. Yeah, quite like this graduated bevel. Shinwa. Well, let's finish up with a quick accuracy check. I don't have a precision miter. That would be nice to test 45 degrees, but I do have a precision square, so at least we can check whether the 90 degrees is on the dot or not, whether the scale's been properly printed onto the metal. I'll start off with this inside protractor and set it up in here. I'll lock it down. And this protractor is a little bit disappointing. It's not dead on. Instead, it's off by, I'd say, around 1/5 of a degree, maybe 1/6 of a degree, about 10 minutes of arc, 15 minutes of arc, something like that. Not great, but it is within its stated precision, and it's quite adequate for its tasks. Now, let's move on to the outside angle protractor. And in order to test that, I'm going to have to lift this up like so. And let's get that position nice. This one here, in contrast, is dead on, dead accurate at 90 degrees. That's kind of nice. And now here's our precision square, the Starrett beast. And let's see whether the calibration from 1969 is still holding. Really easy to use. Nice fluid movement. And here we go. This here is dead on perfect accurate. Awesome. And then lastly, that's just for fun, check out this construction protractor and see whether this scale here matches up. We're expecting a 90 degree. So I'll pop that in there like so. Get it held in well. Lock it down, and yeah, that's dead on. This really big tick marks here, big spaces makes it really nice and precise. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this nerd out. Subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.